Okay. We're gonna. Well, everybody have?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Okay. So let's get started with the Gemorah. So that I don't need this. Save the battery. Let's get started with the Gemorah. We learned through the Mishnah last week. So the Gemorah says, "Michti tana minozir salik." Okay, we're in the middle a little bit where you see the big gimel and the big mem. Right, that's where the Gemorah starts. You got it? Okay, big gimel, big mem. Everybody have it? Okay, so the Gemorah is now saying the following. Gemorah, we know that the Mishnayos are in a particular order. Okay, the Mishnayos are divided up. And when I say Mishnayos, I'm speaking not only of Mishnayos because mostly every Mishnah has a Gemorah with it. So the Mishnayos are divided up into what we call Sidarim. There are 6 Sidarim. Shisha Sidarim. Right? Shisha Sidarim is where we get the acronym of Shas from. Right? So you ask the average Israeli what Shas is, they'll say it's a political party, but it's actually it's an abbreviation for Shisha Sidrei Mishnah. How do you remember the Shisha Sidrei Mishnah? There's a mnemonic for it. Close, keep going. Zman nakat. Zman nakat. Zayin mem nun. Nun kuf tes. Zman nakat. All right? Zayin, the first Zayin, right, is for Zra'im. The first order of Mishnayos is Zra'im. Then mem is for, what's mem? Mo'ed. Most of what we've learned is in the Mo'ed category. What's the next Zman? Zayin mem nun. Noshim. Right, Noshim. So that's Zman. Then Nakat is the second half of the 6. The second nun is Nizikin. That's where you have all the babas, right? Baba Tzia, Baba Kama, Baba Tzia, Baba Basu. You have all the babas in there. You have Voda Zara in there. Okay, that's in that section. Then you have the Kuf. What is Kuf for?
Kedushin?
Nope.
No, not Kedushin.
Kedushin is in Noshim. Okay? Kodshim. Kodshim. Right? You were close. Right? You were close. You get credit for being close, right? Right? What they say about close? Right. So, Kodshim, Kodshim that's tough stuff. What is Kodshim about? Things that, L'tzarenu, unfortunately don't apply to us, and that is matters of Tuman Tahara, ritual purity, impurity, things like that. That's Kodshim. The last one is Taharos. Taharos, which also deals with similar idea. Okay, Zman Nakat. Where is Sotah?
Noshim?
Good. It's in Noshim. Sotah is in Noshim. Makes sense, right? What is Sotah's talking about? A woman, so it makes sense that Sotah's in Noshim. What comes before Sotah?
Gittin?
No.
Comes after, I don't know.
Well, that's an interesting statement, right? Why does Gittin come before Kiddushin?
I thought that was the whole purpose, right?
Well, in other words, it would be logical that which would come first, Kiddushin, the Gemara Kiddushin, the Gemara
I
Gittin.
thought the laws of Kedushin come from the laws of Gittin. They emanate.
There are some things that are learned from some things about Kiddushin, but that's not right?
Kind of like an asset initial.
In other words, logically, we would expect the laws of getting married to follow, to precede the laws of getting divorced. That's logical, right? But that's not the case. The Gemara gives us first the laws of getting divorced, the Gemara of Gittin, and then the laws of getting married, the Gemara of Kiddushin. Why is that? So tongue-in-cheek, some have suggested, because God wants to give us the refuah before the makkah. Right? He wants to give us the cure before the illness. Okay, but that's only a tongue-in-cheek kind of reason, and that doesn't play in all audiences. So you have to be careful where you say that.
Where was that written? When was that written? Like hundreds of years, or?
The source is not, I don't think the source is, I don't know how old.
Who's so
the source
witty?
is. Right, okay. So now, let's, right, we're talking about order, let's focus on the order here. So you have the order of Sotah. What comes before Sotah? Nazir. The Gemara Nazir comes before Sotah. Now, wait a second, you're thinking to yourself, what the heck is Nazir doing in Nashim? Right, what is Nazir?
That's another one. Isn't Nazir when
you
bring
abstain
like a ship
from
show?
hair.
Yeah, you won't cut your hair and you don't drink wine.
So a Nazir is a person who
Takes a vow.
takes an oath to abstain from grapes or grape products, including wine, as well as not cut his hair, as well as not come in and not to be mitame himself. Right? That's a Nazir. Okay? So you might ask, what is that doing? What's it doing in Nashim?
Nashim,
Right?
right?
What's it doing in Nashim? All right,
Right,
Kedushin
right.
I understand. Gittin I understand. Sotah I understand. What is Nazir doing in Nashim? And to make the question even more powerful, what precedes Nazir? What precedes Nazir is Nidarim.
Oh, that makes sense.
Okay, well, that makes sense,
That
except,
there, I mean, neither one belongs in nothing.
right, except what does
They
Nidarim do?
belong together.
Right,
They
okay,
all
so
come together.
Nidarim,
Also, all
No,
about
exactly.
Hashem, these all have to do with the relationship.
Yeah, they're all like
Between
special elevation.
people and Hashem in
that's an interesting,
So
right, Norman's an interesting point,
As a
right?
party, it's an interested party.
Okay, so we're talking here where Hashem is an interested party, very interesting approach. We have, the Gemara is not nearly as philosophical as that, we'll see in a minute, right? But you have
no place
you have
else to put it.
Nidarim. Okay, once I have Nidarim, I understand why I have Nazir.
Right.
Because Nazir is a kind of neder.
Yeah.
But why do I go from Nazir to Sotah? And what's Nidarim and Nazir doing in Nashim? They're doing in Nashim. Those are the questions we have to try to figure out. Why does who cares? Who cares?
Unless there's a connection, so what? They had to put it somewhere. And they had to put, put it somewhere.
So
they
I'm
put it
saying,
right.
so who cares?
You
Yeah,
made the
obviously
point
it
because
is.
you had some,
Yeah, there's obviously a
what is
reason
the
why.
commonality?
In other words, the Gemara, the assumption that we're making here is that when the Chachamim, remember what happened? The Shisha Sidrei Mishnah, I wish Paul were here, right? The Shisha Sidrei Mishnah were redacted from this vast body of oral tradition, right? We had this vast body of oral teaching. It was redacted into a Mishnah, and Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi, Rebbe put it into an order.
Right.
So did he just put it into an order based on whatever fit in the page? Or was there a more logical connection that compelled Rebbe to put it into this order? And the answer is that there must be some connection. In other words, Rebbe didn't do this. He didn't put Nidarim, Nazir, Sotah in that order unless there was a reason why they're in that order. And what we're trying to get to now is, what's the reason? What's the reason why they are in that order? Okay? So let's see. Okay. So we're going to deal at first with Nazir and Sotah. And then I'll answer the question about Nidarim. Okay? Says the Gemara. The Tanya Rebbe Omer, Rebbe says, Lama Nis, I'm sorry, let's go back. My Tana de Katana Sotah. So why did the Tana, in other words, why did Rebbe Yehuda Hanasi, why did he finish Nazir and then start Sotah? What's the connection between the two? So answers the Gemara, the connection is Kid the Rebbe, right? Like Rebbe said in another place, Disanya, as we learn in the Brisa, Rebbe Omer, Rebbe himself said, Lama nismecha parshas Nazir le parshas Sotah. Why did I connect these two? Why did I connect Parshas Nazir to Parshas Sotah? Lomar lecha, to tell you, to teach you. In other words, the connection is coming to teach us something. It's not stam. It's not a connection by chance. It's not a haphazard connection. It's coming to teach us something in particular. And what is that? Listen to this. Shekol haroeh sotah bikil kula. That anyone who sees a sotah bikil kula. What is that word? Kil kul.
She's a mess. She's a mess.
Right? Likalkel means literally to destroy something. It's a malacha on Shabbos, right? So she is a mess. What does it mean she's a mess? So I mentioned last week. No. We're talking about even before that.
No.
She's a mess from the perspective of the degradation that occurs to her. We didn't get to it yet, but I mentioned it in passing last week. That she's paraded through the Beis Hamikdash, right? This long circuitous route in order to give her ample opportunity to confess. Then she refuses to confess. She's brought to this place in front of everybody. There's a crowd there. They're not standing too close in case she is guilty, right? There's a crowd there, right? A crowd. And what happens to her in the presence of this crowd? They uncover her hair.
Humiliating.
That's a big deal. That's humiliating.
Why is it public?
What?
Why is it public?
You tell me.
Because they want to humiliate the woman.
No.
No.
But-
They want to either
It's
induce
a,
her to
it's
confess.
a deterrent.
No, I'm
Well,
saying,
they wanna deter him
but if
from-
she was, especially if she was innocent, it's not like.
It,
Well, she's not
well,
guilty. I mean,
so
it's
so
not-
first of
it's
all,
not-
so first of all, let's understand
Take the
something.
chance
She's
of,
not
Okay.
at the point at the
She
point
was
when
secluded.
she's in the
Right.
Beis
The whole
Hamikdash.
thing.
Right.
Or
guilty
I don't know if
of
any of you saw the tape, but the tape from last week, I know somebody asked the question about Norman maybe. We were talking about. Were you here last week?
I was here, I didn't ask.
Maybe, yeah, we were talking about whether Sotah applied in the Mishkan, in the Beis Hamikdash. So in the tape, I answered that because I looked it up. It did apply in Mishkan Shiloh, and it applied in the first Beis Hamikdash and the second Beis Hamikdash. And there was a time that it stopped. So,
But you would think it would have to be in the Mishkan because it was in the Torah. No? I mean, wouldn't it? Like,
well, there were other things in the Torah that didn't apply till they came into Eretz Yisrael.
yeah, okay.
Right, so this started when they came into Eretz Yisrael, and the
specified,
Mishkan
okay.
was in Shiloh. Right, the Mishkan was stationary in Shiloh. That's when it's right in Shiloh. It applied, and then to the first Beis Hamikdash and second Beis Hamikdash, but not the entirety of the second Beis Hamikdash. It actually stopped earlier. So I mentioned that they parade her around because they want to give her an opportunity to confess. They want to try to wear her down. Now, on the one hand, you could say, wait a second, why are they doing this to her? Right? She's not guilty.
Yeah.
She's not guilty
She hasn't
yet,
been proven
right?
guilty
Well,
yet.
right. Oh, so that's the point. She hasn't been proven guilty yet of adultery.
But she was secluded.
She has been proven guilty of seclusion, right? And being secluded, a married woman being secluded with a man who is not her husband is
Punishable by humiliation.
punishable by right?
Public humiliation.
In other words, I'll just put this, it's wrong. In other words, a married woman being in seclusion with a man, not her husband, is wrong, right? It's wrong. Now, King David took that and extended that from a married woman to a single woman. So a man, married or not, alone with a woman, not his wife, married or not, is prohibited. That's called yichud or seclusion.
How many wives did he have, by the way?
He's one to talk.
That's why he had all those wives.
That's why it's
Right? Right?
Bathsheba,
So this idea.
That was his loophole.
By the way, we should. This is not something to laugh at. I mean, it's something to to think about King David extending this. I understand that, but this is a real issue. It's a real issue in the world in which we live, because it is. I mean, for other reasons today, right? For other reasons today, but it is so easy for someone to be accused of an impropriety. And if there are no other witnesses around, you have to be crazy. Like, I don't believe that there is a male doctor who would examine a female patient without someone in the room.
Right.
Right?
And if they do, there's something wrong with
Yeah,
that.
that's crazy.
Right? It's inviting trouble.
Right.
Who would, who I stopped meeting with women. I stopped meeting with women who want to talk about whatever in my office after hours, right? Because there's nobody around.
Right.
And you leave yourself open for all. I mean, I stopped doing it because it's yichud. During the day, it's not yichud because people are coming in and out. But at night, there's nobody around. It could be yichud. So yichud is a halachic issue, and it's also a societal issue today in the world in which we live. So this woman, I mean, she might not have committed adultery, but she certainly was
And she was warned.
watched by two witnesses.
The witnesses aren't a conviction either. They're witnesses.
Witnesses simply,
Does that make an automatic conviction?
no,
yeah.
not a conviction. What do you mean a conviction?
Well, when witnesses testify.
Witnesses
usually there's a
testify.
judge.
Witnesses
Very good.
testify
Well,
to. Witnesses establish reality. I'm sorry.
Right.
That's
Facts.
right. Witnesses establish facts. All right. There is no question that the witnesses who see her being secluded with this man are establishing a fact that she was secluded with this man long enough for sexual relationships to have
But
taken
even one
place.
witness. If it's a
No.
husband.
Well, so that was the machlokas we had in the Mishnah. Did it have to be two witnesses? Could it be one witness? Could it even be the husband himself? There are these,
Now, just a question on the hair. I thought women cover their hair because it would otherwise turn men on. So here they're exposing the woman's hair to humiliate her, but then everyone can see that. I don't understand that. Why
So,
is it okay to see
okay,
her hair?
so that's a great question. We're going to come to it. We're going to come to it a little bit later when we talk about it. But your question is even better when we learn about the second thing that they did to her. What is the second thing that they did to her? They ripped open her dress. Okay? They not only uncovered her hair, but they ripped open her dress, exposing her, and then they tie a rope. They tie her dress up with a rope. So, like, okay, hair, but now, right? How come they don't put up bleachers? It's like, so.
It's in the base of Mikdash.
No, so when we get there, we're going to learn how was it possible for this? Like, what about the Kohen who did it? Right? Right? Okay, those people are standing over there looking, okay.
But there's a sneeze issue, no?
Well,
That's
the point.
precisely the
Exactly,
question.
right.
There's a big sneeze issue, right?
For-
And
for
here
him,
you have a
that's
Kohen.
Right.
Here's a Kohen who's uncovering this woman's hair, ripping her dress. Like, hello? So we're going to come to that, right? But we can't say that this humiliation, in other words, this public exposure is humiliating. Today, I don't know that anybody would be humiliated by this, right?
Well,
Today would
yeah,
be,
maybe not, but ripping their dress.
whatever, I don't know. Right? Maybe not, I don't know. But in those days, in the days of the Gemorah, if a woman were to be exposed like that in public, it would be humiliating. And it was humiliating. It was humiliating to her. Part of the humiliation was, to get her to confess. In other words, you still have time to save yourself. That was the whole point. You still have time to save yourself, right? This is going to get worse. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse. You still have time to save yourself. And we'll talk about, if she's not guilty, why,
She is guilty of having
Right.
been alone.
yeah, but if she's not guilty of adultery, why doesn't she just say it?
She
Or
does
what?
say it.
Right? I mean, why doesn't she say she was guilty of adultery? In other words,
Avoid the whole thing.
right? We'll learn about what's at stake here. We'll learn about all of those things. But she's taken to this area and she is humiliated, publicly humiliated. That's part of this process. Okay? Says, and again, I mentioned it in the tape because I think somebody asked me, so you can check out the tape. If her husband's a philanderer, it doesn't work, right? When this was connected to when did it stop? It stopped at near the end of the second base of Mikdash, because the morality of the men tanked along with the morality of the women. Meaning that it only works for a woman if her husband's not a philanderer. But if her husband is a philanderer, so this, I mean, we're not saying she didn't commit adultery. We're just saying that this process doesn't work anymore. Right? This miraculous involvement of Hashem in making this determination only works when the Jewish people are on a particular level. When the Jewish people are not on a particular level, so it doesn't work anymore. Which is why, and I'm not sure we'll get to it tonight, but why you have to be very careful not to say these words to your wife. In other words, let's say you say to your wife, I don't want you to be alone with X.
Ron.
Right? I don't want you to be alone with Charlie. I don't want you to be alone with Charlie. Right? And then what happens?
She's alone.
And then there are two witnesses who see her alone with Charlie.
Right.
There are two witnesses who hear you say that. There are two witnesses, let's say, who see her alone with Charlie. You're no longer allowed to have relations with her.
You can't stop that process voluntarily?
No.
Because at the end, you can go back to her.
That's
Assuming she doesn't die from the whatever, you can still go back to her.
right, but that's only because Hashem has said, you're wrong. In other words, she doesn't die, so Hashem has said, it's like Hashem stamped on her forehead, not adultery,
Not guilty.
not guilty, right? But short of that, we don't have that today. We have no way of exonerating her.
No, I understand.
So once you say to your wife, I don't want you to be alone with Charlie, and if you happen to say that in front of two valid witnesses, and then she's alone with Charlie, and two valid witnesses see her alone with Charlie, that could be a problem. We don't have this today because our generation's not worthy of it. And as soon as the morality of the generation started to slip, this whole process went out the window, right? No longer were we able to do it, it no longer worked, and the whole thing stopped. That was before the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. That was in the waning years of the second Beis HaMikdash. Okay, so let's come back here, okay? So now we understand, why is Nazir connected to,
What does Yazir mean?
I'm sorry?
She wrote, it's Shekol HaRoah Sotah B'Kilkala, we never got past.
Oh, I'm sorry. Shekol haro'eh sotah b'kilkula. Whoever sees this suspected woman in her state of disgrace, public disgrace, yazir atzmo min hayayin. What will he do? He will become a nazir, yazir, right? Yazir. He will prohibit to himself wine. Let's pshat. Why will he
Just
prohibit?
for wine? No, not-
Why will he prohibit to himself wine?
Not to lose inhibition.
So that
So
he's
say
not be
alcohol,
alone with her?
In other words, he sees what happened to her,
Right.
right? Generally, we assume that when a person has imbibed, the level of discretion is reduced.
Yep.
The level of inhibitions is reduced, and that can bring a person to to transgress. Right, can bring a person to do the wrong thing. I heard on the radio, I don't even remember where I was listening to, I think yesterday or today, I heard somebody say, I knew when I was back in college, if I was up at 4 o'clock in the morning with my friends and we were drinking, I knew that I was not going to be making good decisions. In other words, right, you reach a certain point and I didn't say a word, right? You reach
The Supreme Court closes at
right.
9 p.m.
You reach a certain point and you
No, this is
realize,
not the 9, right?
but you reach a certain point where you know you're not going to be making good decisions. So the Nazirs, right? A person sees, wow, look at this woman, right? Look at what happened. I don't know whether she did something or she didn't do something, but I don't even want to get close to that, right? So Yazir is atzmo min hayayin. He'll see the woman in her public disgrace, bekil kula, and Yazir atzmo min hayayin. He will take upon himself an oath of Nazirus, which will prohibit to him wine, grape products, but will also prohibit to him becoming tameh and prohibit to him haircut,
Is
cutting
being
his
a
hair.
Nazir a good thing?
That's a whole machlokas.
Because I remember you have to give a drasha on this, and there was you talked about the korban that you have to give afterwards.
It's a debate within the Talmud as to whether being a Nazir, taking this oath of Nazirus, is a good thing. Why would a person take an oath of Nazirus? Well, we just had one reason in front of us in black and white, namely, you would take an oath of Nazirus because you were worried, right? You were worried. It's sort of like, it's a person who's a recovering alcoholic. He doesn't hold a glass of wine or
Go into a bar.
he doesn't even go into the bar. Why? Because he knows he's trying to avoid it. So that's the same idea here. In other words, you could be a Nazir because you know yourself that you need to, you need to remove these temptations away from yourself.
But can you just avoid the alcohol and
No, you don't have
not
to
do the
take
rest
the
of this?
vow.
The haircut?
You can take an oath avoiding alcohol, but that doesn't make you a Nazir.
No, I'm saying, but if you just want to restrain yourself, just voluntarily, I'm not going to drink.
You could take an oath that would.
not even-
You don't even have to go to the
You
level
just
of
don't do
oath.
it. I mean-
What
No,
happens if
but
you break the oath?
What's the whole? Why does a person take an oath?
Because it's got much more power.
Correct. In other words, why do you take an oath? You take an oath. It's like you start a diet, right? What's to keep you on the diet?
Nothing.
Nothing, right? But if you start a diet and you start a diet and
You prepay for the training.
Right, exactly.
And you
no,
prepay
but
for the-
I don't know. Maybe that, but not even that. Let's say this. Let's say that you were told that you are
Pre-diabetic.
you're lactose intolerant. I don't know. You're lactose intolerant or pre-diabetic or you have celiac, right? So if you're lactose intolerant, how hard is it going to be for you to avoid milk?
Not hard at all.
Not hard at all. Because when you drink milk or you eat ice cream, what's going to happen? You're going to feel miserable, right? So if you have celiac, you're going to avoid gluten because if you eat gluten, you're going to be miserable. But if you're not lactose intolerant and you don't have celiac disease, and I say to you, I want you to avoid ice cream, so that's a little bit harder, right? So one of the ways of fortifying your willpower is to take an oath, because then it's not simply a matter of willpower. It becomes it's like a religious kind of thing. I'm amazed by the following people. The chazan that we had for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur in the main shul, Chazan Srulik Hershtik, beautiful voice, he's Israeli, beautiful voice, second year. He smokes like a chimney. Mamish like a chimney. Like he lights one cigarette from another. No, I don't think he's that bad, but he smokes a lot. Right? He smokes a lot. And it's interesting because we had a discussion and he said, I said, why do you smoke? Who smokes today? Why do you smoke? He said a lot of Israelis smoke, and the reason they smoke is because all of the stress of living in Israeli society, this is one of the ways of dealing with stress. Smoking is one of the ways of dealing with stress. I've heard that from other people also, that smoking is whatever it is. It helps people deal with stress, whatever it is. Okay, so he smokes a lot. Comes comes Shabbos, stops. The minute Shabbos is over, he's got to smoke. So it's like a Pella. Like I'm saying to myself, here's a guy who can turn off. Smoking is an addiction, right? He can turn off this addiction for 24 hours.
25.
26 hours, whatever it is. He can turn it off for 26 hours, okay? Right? He can turn it off for 26 hours, right?
Does he smoke on Yom Tov?
He smokes on Yom Tov, yes. You can smoke on Yom Tov. Assuming you can smoke on Yom Tov. Okay. Right, so what's the idea? So the idea is sometimes when something is religious, and there's a religious component to it, it reinforces your willpower. And I have to believe that that's what's going on here, right?
But I don't drink without an oath, so
You don't what?
I don't drink, and there's no oath.
Did you make all that wine for nothing?
Yeah, for others.
Right, you don't drink and there's no oath, right? So this wouldn't apply to you, right? But I promise you, there are plenty of people who do drink, who, if they see something like this,
But I'm saying but say you were someone that could just stop it. Did you still have to become a Nazir?
no.
Okay.
What the Gemara, what our Gemara is saying is that the reason that Nazir and Sotah are together, because there is a connection between them. The connection between them is, right? The connection between them is that if a person sees a woman in her public, a person sees a Sotah in her public disgrace, some people, not everybody, but somebody who does.
People may be inclined to give up
Right.
alcohol, and those that are more susceptible to it are inclined to
Also,
take it
the,
off.
not the oath of Nazir, it's more of a public demonstration than just a private oath to not drink.
Right.
Because your hair is growing, you
Correct. And if somebody says to you, gee, why did you become a Nazir? You can say, I became a Nazir because of this. And as far as back to Hal's question, right, there are those who say that being a Nazir is a good thing because it elevates one spiritually. That's the whole point. It's like, going on top of the mountain and, sitting on top of the mountain for a little while. But others say it's not because you are depriving yourself from something in this world that Hashem permitted to you. And we have enough things that we're prohibited from enjoying. So if you prohibit to yourself something that Hashem permitted, so you have to bring a carbon chatas for that. Okay. So now, so if I ask you, what's the connection between Nazir and Sotah? What are you going to tell me?
If you see a Sotah, you're going to become a Nazir.
So which comes first?
Sotah.
All right, so what comes first in the order?
Nazir.
There you go. So says the Gemara. Okay, very nice. That's a nice reason, says the Gemara. I like your reasoning. All right. I like your reasoning. It makes a lot of sense. However, right, Velisni Sotah v'hader lisni Nazir. So you know what? That makes a lot of sense. So
Sotah
what
should
should the
come
order
first.
be? So the order should be Sotah and then Nazir, because you see the Sotah and then you become the Nazir, not Nazir and then Sotah.
Become a Nazir and you won't
Right.
become
So
a
why does Nazir come before Sotah? So says the Gemara, Aidi ditana ksubos vitana hamadir tana nidarim. What's the Gemara that precedes nidarim?
No, Nazir is Nadarim.
What's
What
No.
precedes Nazir
no?
is
I'm
Nadarim.
sorry. What precedes Nazir is nidarim. What's the Gemara that precedes nidarim? The Gemara is ksubos. Right? Ksubos. Obviously, you know what ksubos is about. The last perek of Maseches Ksubos talks about oath taking. It's hamadir, person who takes an oath. Right? If a man takes a woman takes an oath, right? So since the Gemara taught at the end of Ksubos,
About
right? In
Nadarim.
other words, Gittin, Kiddushin,
Right.
Ksubos.
Right.
Those three work. Now, since at the end of Ksubos, the last parak mentions taking oaths,
Yeah, so then
so
it
what follows
flows into
Ksubos? Nadarim. And now that we're talking about Nadarim, what follows Nadarim? Nazir. And now that we're talking about Nazir, we can
One of the
connect
reasons.
Sotah to it, okay? That's why even though chronologically it should be Sotah, then Nazir, because we go back a little bit further, that's not the order. Okay, so let's go. So
How was it given to Moshe?
this was not given to Moshe. This is Torah Shabbat Peh.
No.
That's what it was.
It was given to Moshe, it's just
This wasn't written down.
Right, but in other words, when we say Torah Shabbat Peh was given to Moshe, what does that mean? It doesn't mean that Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai with the Mishnah memorized in his head. Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai with halachos. Those halachos, when he explained psukim, he explained what those halachos were. So, for instance, the Torah says, "V'hayula totafos beineinecha," right? They should be as frontlets between your eyes. So, where might I think tefillin go? Right here. Moshe Rabbeinu said, "No, they go up here." All right. How do we know tefillin have to be black? Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe. How do we know tefillin have to be square? Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe. All right. So we have these halachos l'Moshe misinai. That's only part of Torah Shabbat Peh. Part of Torah Shabbat Peh is halachos l'Moshe misinai. There's other parts of Torah Shabbat Peh that involve the discussion of chachamim, right? In other words, yes, there's a classical approach that says that Moshe Rabbeinu knew anything that was ever going to be.
No, but you forget that part.
No, but how did it,
In other
how
words-
was it presented to
Right,
Moshe?
So Moshe Rabbeinu learned it.
Halachos about
Moshe
The
Rabbeinu
Torah
learned
and
it
his
as
words.
Moshe Rabbeinu learned it as he was taught the psukim in the Torah.
Right, so what is there Hal's question? Is there a different order in the Torah? Where does Sotah come?
So when it says when
vis-a-vis-
people learn Torah Shabbat Peh, right, the Chachamim, they were able to learn and work all day and do Torah Shabbat Peh. So what does that mean? So they sat they started parsha by parsha and then said, oh, on this is the oral law? Or did they have some order of...
So we have to assume that before Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi redacted the Mishnah,
Right.
there was some order of Torah Sheba'al Peh, probably
That's what I'm asking.
revolving around the parshios of the Torah.
Right.
Probably revolving around the parshios of the Torah. But the body of Torah Sheba'al Peh grew and grew and grew until we were afraid that it would be forgotten. And at that point, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi redacted it. When Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi redacted it, he had to put it in an order. It's not in the order of Parsha. He put it in the order. He put it in a contextual order,
Right.
like all of the tractates that are in a
So until
particular.
that time, it was not in that order.
Correct. That's correct. Okay. So this is all being attributed to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. But Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi thought to himself, "Oh, the last parak in Maseches Ksubos deals with Nedarim.
The next logical
So
thing.
if that makes sense, then the next Gemara will be Nedarim. The next set of Mishnayos will be Nedarim. Then the next set of Mishnayos after Nedarim will be Nazir because it's a type of Neder. And then after Nazir, we might as well put in Sotah because there's a connection between Sotah and Nazir. Even though it's a reverse chronological connection, there is the connection.
Which shows you his command of the entire body that he was dealing with, because he would have had to have been able to piece everything together from all the various sources.
Correct. Correct. 100%. Okay, let's go. So the Gemara continues, and the Gemara says, just to go over what I just said outside to you, Aidi detana ksubos, since Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi put ksubos in place, vitana hamadir, and the last parak of ksubos is hamadir, which talks about, you see the word neder in hamadir, tana nedarim. So the next thing the Rabbi Yehuda taught was nedarim. Va'aidi de tana nedarim, and once he taught nedarim, so tana nazir didami nedarim. He taught nazir because nazir is in the same family as nedarim. Uksani sotah, and then why is sotah follow? Kid the Rebbe, like Rebbe's opinion. Right, like Rebbe's opinion what? Like Rebbe's opinion that...
See us out there,
Okay.
go
Good, okay, good. Gemara goes on, and what does the Gemara say? So the go back to the opening statement of our Mishnah. The opening statement of our Mishnah was Hamekane leishto. Right? Hamekane leishto. How did we translate that? The one who warns his wife. The word Hamekane, right? Generally the word for warning is hasra'ah. Right? You have to have hasra'ah, right? Before you have to have a warning before you can punish somebody. So, but here we don't use the word hasra, we use the word mekana, because that's what the Torah uses. Why the Torah uses it, we'll have to come across.
Is there a word for jealousy?
Yeah, kina is jealousy.
Is it the same?
Yes, correct. We're going to learn that that's how it's connected, right? But the first word of the Mishnah is hamekana liishto, a man who warns his wife. Says our Gemara now that this phraseology of hamekane, the one who warns his wife, implies the eved in lechatchila lo. What does it imply? It implies that the statement of the Mishnah, the way in which it's phrased, implies that we're dealing with a situation where he already warned her. Right? And now we're looking back to see if the warning was good. Right? So now we want to know how many witnesses heard him warn her. But the implication from the language is that he already warned her, and now we're looking back at it. We're not dealing with the question of whether or not he should warn her.
Right.
All right? The
Whether he did
implication from the fact that the Mishnah begins with a language that implies this already took place, it would seem to mean that if it didn't already take place, you shouldn't do it. Which would seem to imply that you shouldn't give this warning to your wife. Now, at the very beginning, we spoke about why today you shouldn't give that warning to your wife. Right? You shouldn't give that warning to your wife today because you could put yourself in a position where the two of you are prohibited to each other forever. All right? But why in those? How could the Gemara suggest that what the Mishnah is teaching us is we're dealing with a b'di'evid situation? B'di'evid means it's not optimal, or it's already after the fact. So we're dealing with a b'di'evid situation, implying
We should never get
that you shouldn't do it.
Right.
You shouldn't do it. Now, what does that mean? You shouldn't do it. So, on the one hand, you could say, why? What does it mean you shouldn't do it? It means you and your wife should get along. You should have a good relationship, and you should never chas v'shalom. You shouldn't argue with each other. You should never get to the point where your wife is going to be secluded with another man. You should never get to that point. Okay, that's one interpretation. But what the Gemara is saying is something else, right? Because the Gemara we are dealing with a case where this is what's going on, right? The horse is already out of the barn, right? This is what we're dealing with. So what does it mean? I see my wife hanging out with Charlie, right? And they're getting chumsy with each other. So I'm not supposed to warn her? I'm not supposed. The implication of the Gemara is I'm not supposed to warn her, right? B'di'evid, if I warned her, okay, so then let's look and see how many witnesses were there, blah blah blah. But the implication is I shouldn't warn her. What does that mean? I shouldn't warn her? I should just let her be chumsy with Charlie, right? Is that now again? Remember, we're dealing with a different kind of society, you know, where roles were much more clearly defined than they are today. When the relationship between husband and wife was different than it is today. And I think you would have a hard time saying to your wife, I don't want you to be, I saw you schmoozing with Shimon over there, right? You know, you're always schmoozing with Shimon at Kiddush. I don't want you together with Shimon.
in
Right?
private. You're not telling him not to talk to him. You're saying not to talk to him alone.
No, so what the Gemara is saying is don't do this in the presence of,
So don't tell her not to be alone in private with him, in the presence of two witnesses. You can say to her, you know, don't be so friendly with whoever. That's a lot different than don't be alone in a room.
so Ron
by
is
yourself
so
with him
Ron
for
is
whatever,
parsing
how
out
long.
the words, all
If there were
right?
witnesses, it wasn't private.
Right? So Ron is saying
No,
Ron is
tell it
saying
to her.
what the
she goes
Gemara
in
means
private.
here.
What he's saying.
Ron is saying I think Ron is saying what the Gemara means here is you can talk to her and you can tell her I'm not happy that you're so chumsy with Shimon at Kiddush. You're always hanging out with Shimon. Blah 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 blah. You're texting with Shimon all day, right? Right?
Texting.
Texting. I said, right? You're texting. Right? You're texting. That was texting, right? Texting. It was, he said it right there, he said it, right? I said texting, right? Right, so you're texting, you're right? All right, so what happens? So, okay, so I understand under those circumstances. So Ron says, okay, you should tell her, you know, you have a right to tell her. It's, you know, you're uncomfortable with it, you have a right to tell her. Okay, you know, you're a little bit nervous about what's going on. Okay, but that's not what the Gemara says. The Gemara seems to say you shouldn't do a kinui at all. Not that you shouldn't do a kinui in public, right? But that,
You shouldn't
But-
have to set these boundaries because they should be
They
natural.
should have already been there.
You should
no,
be communicating.
that's very nice, but that's also not what the Gemara is implying, right? What the Gemara is implying is that you should not, right? That you should that you should not do this, right? You should not give her. You should not be mekana her. What do you mean you should not be mekana her? Oh. So I'm going to jump ahead, even though you don't have the page in front of you. At the bottom of Beis Amud Beis and the top of Gimel Amud Aleph, the Gemara goes into greater detail on this. And the Gemara actually says that this is related to a very interesting machlokes between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. And the machlokes is what grounds are adequate grounds in halacha for a man to divorce his wife? What grounds are adequate grounds?
I didn't even know you needed
Have you
to
heard
have
anything?
grounds. No, I didn't think
Okay.
you needed to have grounds.
What?
You need to have grounds?
You have to have a reason to divorce your wife.
You want to do it? I'm not.
No, you could. No, you could. You
No,
could.
I'm not. You can't just say I don't want to marry
No. You have to, right? You can't just say I don't want to be married anymore because I want to hang out in the bar. I don't want to be married anymore, right? There has to be. Or you can't. If your wife agrees, you know, you have a conversation. She says, you know what, I don't want to be married anymore either. Okay, so then you give her a get, finish. But let's say you don't want to be married anymore, and she wants to be married. So Beis Din will allow you to divorce her, but only with cause.
Okay.
So the question is, what's cause? Joe says adultery. Absolutely, that's cause, right? That's cause. But you know what happens to her? She gets killed. So you don't have to worry about divorcing her.
Not getting children.
No
Right.
child support.
If she admits it,
No, I'm not talking about if she admits it, right?
That's
If she admits it, then she gets divorced without her. She loses her
Right,
ketubah,
ketubah.
right? But let's say let's say you accuse her of committing
She says
adultery.
it's not true.
She says it's not true, and
What do they do today?
if there's a way,
They reconcile.
they don't do anything today,
So you give it, you get
the
it
other
back,
cause
you're
is the
done.
opposite.
right? But so let's understand the two opinions, okay? So one opinion is Beis Shammai, one opinion is Beis Hillel. Beis Shammai takes the stringent opinion, and Beis Hillel says Beis Shammai says you can only divorce your wife for significant cause. Significant cause, like a davar erva. She hasn't been faithful to you, right? So for those circumstances, you can divorce her. Beis Hillel comes along and says, no, you don't have to have something so significant. If she burns your lunch, if she burns your dinner, you can divorce her. That's grounds to divorce
Even
her.
the hair on the food, right?
Yeah, right. In other words, Beis Hillel, especially if it's not hers, right? Beis Hillel is saying, you can divorce her for
Pretty much any reason.
for whatever reason. So it's interesting. If we say, is the Gemara implying that you should, when the Gemara says don't be mekana her, don't warn
just
her,
divorce her.
is the Gemara assuming that you should just allow her to,
Be
to
unfaithful.
text with Shimon all day and hang out with Shimon and Kiddush and blah blah blah, that you should just allow that to happen and ignore it? No. What is the Gemara saying? The Gemara is saying is you can divorce her.
It's a Beis Hillel.
Right? According to Beis Hillel, these are grounds, right, for you to divorce her. Right? You don't know that she's unfaithful, right? If you knew that she was unfaithful, everybody would agree you could divorce her. You don't know that she's unfaithful, but she's acting in a manner which is not sanua, not modest, not appropriate, crossing some boundaries. Those are grounds to divorce her according to Beis Hillel. So according to Beis Hillel, you shouldn't be mekana her. You shouldn't give her this. You shouldn't invoke this whole process. What should you do?
Just divorce her.
Just divorce her. You have grounds, divorce her, end the relationship. You let her go her way, you go your way, finished. Now again, we're not talking about marriage counseling and reconciling and all of these things. Don't take our 21st century approach to this and put it into the Gemara, right? That's a whole separate discussion. If halachically, if a woman has an adulterous relationship, is she allowed to be together with her husband? Right? Is she halachically allowed to be together? What if her husband forgives her? What if she does tshuva? Is she allowed to be together with her husband? Are they allowed to continue to be together as husband and wife? I'm not giving you an answer here. I'm just saying that there's halachic discussion about this, right? But we're not talking about that here. We're not talking about reconciliation. We're not talking about marriage counseling. We're talking about this is what happened. So what do you do? So the Gemara implies that warning your wife,
You're heading down a dangerous
you're heading down a very dangerous road. It is a better road to simply divorce her. Divorce her, she gets her ksuba, right? You give her ksuba, she goes her way, you go your way, that's it. The behavior that she's exhibiting, this behavior that's invoking jealousy, so that behavior is inappropriate enough for you to say, okay, listen, I don't want to, right? I don't want to go on with this relationship. Even if you do, I don't want to. And here's your get, here's your ksuba. Goodbye. Okay.
And you pay your 200.
You pay her the ksuba, right?
And vice versa, there's no mechanism for the other way around.
What does that mean, vice versa?
Oh, the husband's floundering around, and the wife is sitting and being nice. And
No, he's not allowed. He's not allowed. The husband is.
I have to put that in there.
Let's just back up here. The husband is not allowed to commit adultery. What would be adultery for the husband?
Sleeping with somebody else's wife.
Sleeping with somebody else's wife, right? If the husband is sleeping with
A single woman.
a single woman, so in our society today, that is held to be inappropriate, but it wasn't always that way in society. And in certain societies,
Come
that's, you know,
It's called mistress.
yeah, that in certain societies.
If a woman
Right.
has no grounds for divorce, that's what I'm saying.
No,
A
woman
does
can't-
not
No,
have-
if a woman, let's say that a husband beats his wife,
Shifcha.
right? No, he was right, it's a pelegesh.
on.
Don't you remember years ago there was this 1-800
1-800
pelegesh, right? You don't remember that?
What?
That years ago there was this
I
whole
only heard about that from you,
campaign of
because-
1-800 pelegesh.
Seriously, in our class.
Are you serious?
20 years ago, or whatever.
Many years ago. I don't even remember how many. None of you remember this?
Yes,
Right, you remember, but none of you remember it independent of me?
None of us will admit it. What
So
are we doing now?
there was a point in time. I don't remember how long ago. There was a point in time where somebody came up with this scheme that they felt would improve shalom bayis, right? And how
It
would
was a
right
man who floated up.
right? And how would it
No woman
how
would
would
believe that.
how would it don't be so sure. How would it improve shalom bayis? Right? It could be a very successful operation. It could be a woman. Right? How would it improve shalom bayis? So they said a lot of the tension in shalom bayis revolves around matters of intimacy. So if the man is able to have a woman within the boundaries of what halacha permits, right, then that will increase the shalom bayis between him and his wife. That would be a very difficult argument to make from the pulpit, but right. But they did make. There was a time when such an argument was put forth, and there was even a whole campaign, 1-800 Pilegesh. Whether it was a real thing or not a real thing, I don't know if you could look it up anymore. Whether it was a real thing or wasn't a real thing, you know. But that was the idea. The idea was that there is this
People are doing
Who knows?
there is this concept,
It's the precursor to
right? There is this concept that goes way back,
Before the-
right? Back to
before 10
right back to Chumash. We know, right? Rachel, Leah, Bilhah, and Zilpah. Right? We know that there were concubines, right? And they were like wives, but we know that there were other women. Right? There were other women who were cared for by the husband, and
Second family, mistress.
yeah.
Still goes on.
And I'm sure that it still goes on. In certain societies, it's more accepted, right? In certain societies, it's more accepted. In other societies, it's less accepted. So anyway, so the idea here is that that the husband has the grounds to say, I don't want to live like this. So I'm going to divorce you. So I'm saying, so let's say that the husband does something, right? He commits adultery with, meaning he has relations with a married Jewish woman, not his wife. Or
How about her sister?
he beats his wife, whatever. She has the right to go to Bezdin and to say to Bezdin, I want a divorce. And Bezdin will, if the situation is appropriate, force the husband to divorce his wife. Ron asks a good question. A get which is given against his will is not considered a get. So what does it mean Bezdin can force him to do that? How's that possible? So for this we rely on the famous Rambam. The famous Rambam. The Rambam says, it's a famous Rambam.
He really wants to do it.
In other words, some people rely on the following. Some people say, well, either he's going to divorce her or she's going to become a widow, one way or the other. But others say, look, everybody wants to do the right thing. Everybody inside wants to do the right thing. But what happens? Sometimes our Yetzer Hara gets in the way of us doing the right thing. So if the Bezdin starts to beat this guy, they're really beating his Yetzer Hara. And when he says, okay, I'll give the get, That's the true
It's a
him.
total shock.
That's right. That's not against his will. That's the true will coming out. That's the true will coming out. That's
Everybody
the
knows
Rambam.
it's Rambam.
Right, right. It's
Nobody knows
Is it the guy in the Borough Park or something? There's a guy that.
it happens. Listen, don't think that it doesn't happen. Don't think that there aren't vans. There was a case that
Wasn't that going on a couple of years
yeah,
ago?
yeah.
Unseen or something?
torturing some
Right.
guy. Okay. See y'all next week. Good Gemara. Wait, do we like this Gemara?
Doing marriage, right?